Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Welcome back to the Storm Cellar. Brad and Ray are obviously here. We have a special guest this week from the Hockey News, and I had to look it up because y'all know I'm an old man. I remember buying the Hockey News in print at my local gas station or bookstore for years and years and years. And so they've been around since 1947 is what I think we came up with, Ray. I mean, that's some serious longevity in an ever-changing world, and somebody who successfully navigated print to digital transition too, right? I mean, that's a really probably cool story in and of itself.
There's no question about that. And it speaks to our guests, knowledge. You can't write for the Hockey News without being in the know, right? That was like I don't want to call it a Bible, but the Hockey News, that's what it was like when I grew up too. You know what I mean? Same sort of deal. You'd see it in the grocery store rack and you'd, urge mom, hey, can you buy that for me? Or I'll go get it. I guess I want to read it. And you flip through and it was just, I don't want to call it encyclopedic, but yeah.
For Hockey News. That's all I really remember.
Yeah.
You had those two sources.
It was amazing. And our guest is Ryan Henkel. He writes for the Hockey News. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us in the Storm Cellar. Pull up a chair, sit down. We got things to chop up here, and we're very happy to have you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
So Ryan, in the Storm Cellar, we like to focus on the guests, the fans, the Caniacs and jerks that are out there. We find out what they're all about. They're the fuel for the Hurricanes, right? And we become like family out there. And Ryan, you get to cover the team. You got a very unique type job and situation, and we really want to focus on that for you. So we like to hear your story. How does someone get to the Hockey News? Like, you've got to have a good story there, because that's amazing.
Well, it's kind of it's just been an opportunity of kind of, biding the time, doing the work. So like I said, I grew up in North Carolina, so I've lived here my whole life. So I've been into hockey so long as the Canes have been here. But from my dad, he's originally from Long Island. So he grew up an Islanders fan. When he moved to North Carolina, he actually completely discarded that. He was like, no more Islanders. It's full stop Hurricanes now. So I grew up with him.
Nice.
Yeah. And he would take me to games and whatnot. Like, I ended up going to a bunch of games with him and stuff. So I grew up around the game. I always loved the game. And actually, when I was in college, I think I was a junior in college. I went to NC State, and I was just looking for something to do. A lot of my local friends that moved far away. I kind of was just looking for something to do. And my fiance encouraged me. She was like, just go try something, find a club, find something, do something. And I found The Technician, which is NC State's student-run newspaper. And I just went in one day and I was like, hey, I'd like to try doing something. And they were really nice. Andrew Schnicker, I don't know if you know him or whatnot, but he's kind of been around. And for a while, he was the sports editor at the time. And he kind of brought me in, showed me the ropes. And we got into conversations. They were like, oh, you like hockey. You know a lot. You seem to know a lot about it. Would you and kind of did my time at The Technician. I was doing sports journalism. So I was covering, basketball, volleyball, football. Every single wrestling, every single NC State, sport that you can think of. And eventually The Technician actually has a media pass for the Hurricanes. So they actually have a seat there and they can cover the team. And so, Andrew was a senior and he was like, hey, would you like, to have the opportunity when I graduate to hand this off to you? Because, you've seemed to have the passion, you're really knowledgeable on it. So I was really excited about that. I think the first time I ever covered a game was 2019. It was April 1st or 30th. I can't remember. It was against the St. Louis Blues. And I remember covering that. It was just an awesome experience. And then the following year, I got to cover the team fully for the whole length of it for The Technician. And so that was really fun, except for when COVID happened. So I went to every single home game, was covering the team, all that, and then boom, COVID hit. And as we all know, everything kind of shuts down.
Yeah, no
that
kidding.
happens.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Now, I got to find out that first time at the game. covering it. You get a chance to get down into like, what was the feeling like? I guess did you get into the locker room? Who was your first, interview? Did you have a first interview like that? Like, how did it all play out? Because that had to have been overwhelming.
Yeah, so it was mostly like a shadow and kind of follow along game. So I remember we
Okay.
talked to Sebastian Aho because he had a big goal in that game. I remember Jake Allen went to play a board along the walls. Aho picked his pocket, was wrapped around, and just put it into the net to kind of seal the game away. And so I remember we were in the locker room and I was just kind of standing back to watch as everyone was in the scrum, recorders out in front, kind of talking to him. And I just kind of watched from afar, kind of picked it up and all that.
Nice, nice. And so now, what's the feeling like? You've been doing this for, well, so now, even with the not, I was going to say lockout. Oh my God, I don't want to relive a lockout. Even with with COVID and stuff, you've had a lot of games that you've watched from up high. You've had a chance to do interviews, talk to the players. What is it like behind the curtain? Because, as fans, we usually get to see everything out on the ice and stuff like that, but we don't get the vibe. Like, we know of the culture, but we don't feel it behind the scenes. What's that like for you? Tell us about it.
So I mean, I assume it's like most any other kind of pressers, I guess for me myself, because I've been doing sports for so long. But you come after wins, especially, it's very rambunctious. You come in, you have classic rock playing, Bill Berneson's playlist, so you have Thunderstruck, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, anything like that, cranked up full volume. Everybody's on the bikes or whatnot. Get your work done with Billy B. Rod always says it, and it's true. When we come into that locker room, everybody is in the weight room or on the bikes, getting their workout in, getting their post game, and then we'll go into the locker room, and they'll bring a player out or like one or two, and they'll kind of sit in the lockers. Everyone kind of forms around them. We have conversations. We joke to guys. It's a very jovial. After losses, obviously, it's a little more somber. Guys aren't
Sure.
happy. Guys are kind of upset, but it's a very fun atmosphere inside because, especially like I say, I always go back to wins because this team is kind of known for winning over the past few years while I've been here.
Yeah.
So
It helps.
yeah, so it's just very rambunctious too because you'll have guys like you'll have interviews and you'll have random guys come up. I think we were talked to Turbo. What game was that? I think it was the Columbus 3-0 win. We were talking to Turbo, and Kuzi like came by behind him. He was like, "Tell him about my screen on the goal. Tell him about the screen on my goal." And they just have like just little like quips and whatnot, and like you always try to get the players to like joke around because like they get it too. They're like like Jarvie. If everybody knows Jarvie's a character, and sometimes he hams it up a little for the cameras and whatnot too.
Sure.
But he's always one that like jokes around. Turbo's sneaky funny, really. He always hits you that little whip. He knows. He's
Yeah.
well aware. He's
Yeah.
well aware of all the
Know
stuff.
how to work it, right? That's awesome.
I have like a two-part question, Ryan. So I was very fortunate for a while to shoot for an online magazine here in Boston. So I was credentialed for BU, BC Hockey, Hockey East. Was supposed to shoot like the original Winter Classic at Fenway when they brought that back. And I know for me it was easier because I went to NC State as well. So I didn't go to BU, I didn't go to BC. So for me as an outside, journalist / photographer, I don't have a skin in the game. I'm watching the game. I'm enjoying it. I'm just trying to get my shots and things. It's different when, you're a fan of the team, right? And you're having to cover the team, but there's also journalistic integrity, right? So you kind of have to step back, right? We don't want to see, as much as we as fans are okay with it, like you don't want to see journalists necessarily, pumping high fives and stuff when, things are going good or bad. Like, right, you're trying to keep some semblance of like, I'm here to write a story. I'm here to kind of say what's up. So I was hoping you'd expand a little bit about, is that difficult for you and kind of how do you do that? And then second part would be, one of the things I like about your articles is I'm and hopefully this doesn't sound like a trap question. If it does, let me know. I'm one who thinks that, when you follow a team for years and years and years, you do kind of get to know them a little bit. And in Boston, we see nobody asks difficult questions. It just isn't really done, right? And how do you draw the line there between like I need to ask questions and one of the things I like about your writing is you've asked Rod some things that I'm a little surprised of. They weren't like super intricate, difficult things, but just honest things like, hey, like can we get a couple words about XYZ thing? That's I don't think some other more traditional like old meaning older journalists would necessarily ask. So how do you balance that part as well between you need to have a relationship with the guys, right, so that they'll talk to you, but there's also the need to know, right? We're fortunate in Carolina in that there hasn't been a lot of things that would be like contentious. If you're a Coyotes reporter today, like there's tough questions that need to be asked, but you don't really want to ask them, right? Because the guys and like they're in this tough spot. And if you have anything about how that kind of gets balanced, that would be part two. So
I'll kind of start with the kind of like the balancing the fan perspective. So like that was definitely something, especially when I did my first year with Technician, kind of through college. I could also circle back to kind of get to how I got to the hockey news. So during the COVID year, Andrew reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to write for Canes Country, the SB Nation blog, because he was with that. So it was just kind of like a transition because I graduated college during the pandemic, moved into that, did that for a year. And then the next year I took over. I was the site manager for Canes Country during the all. And that was really fun because I was the outdoor game. Got to cover that. It was really fun. And then during the playoffs in the Eastern Conference Final, Michael Trakos, who is like the digital producer of manager for the Hockey News, they were looking for somebody to cover Carolina in the case they went to the Stanley Cup Final. He was like, we're looking to have, a guy on hand that we can, go to that can cover the team if need be, because like big deal. I kind of talked to him and like we agreed to all that, but then like it kind of blossomed into, hey, we're doing team-based sites. Would you want to do that continually for the future? And so that's how I kind of got into the Hockey News. And
awesome.
shout out to the Canes making the East Conference Final. But yeah, so that whole experience going through it, I remember my first year Technician. It was definitely a thing of like I felt like the highs of wins and the pits from the lows from the losses. It was like tough because especially that that first year was like they had just made the playoffs the year prior. It's like, what is this team going to be? Is there going to be a contender? Or are they not going to be a contender? It was a lot of emotional conflict there, but I went through this too. I had written a whole article in one of my nonfiction writing courses in college too about like how does a fan become a non-partial judge? How do I become somebody who can step away? And it was just kind of a lot of self-reflection went on, just kind of looking at it as like this is a job. This is this isn't just going and enjoying and having a good time. There's a job, and people are following me. People are reading my stuff, and I view myself more as just kind of somebody who's able to tell the story to the fans, kind of give them an inside perspective of things they maybe not know about, or kind of more either in depth or a story they haven't told about. And so I kind of view it myself. I enjoy the job. I say I'm a fan of the job and not as much of a fan of the Hurricanes. Win or lose, I'm still doing my job and it's still important to everything. And then so it was just one of those self-reflection things where I just kind of tell myself, it's like, hey, this is different now. You're a completely different area of the field. It's not the same. I can still kind of like, it's better. Stories are better and people are more interested when things are going well and teams are winning. I will say that. So I do enjoy that because people are more willing to read. People are more happy. People aren't in my Twitter comments saying this team is a first round exit all the time. So it's definitely yeah. I'm not pulling for the team, but it makes my job easier when the team is good. I will say that. And like, so moving on to your question about kind of the difficult questions, I think it's a similar thing. It's like, these guys get it. And you kind of get a sense for that. Who likes to talk to the media? Nobody really likes to talk to the media, to be fair. But like certain guys are better about it. They understand like, hey, this is a job. I got to do it. You got to like Jordan Stahl, after every loss, he's usually in his locker stall. He knows he has to answer questions about like, hey, what happened here? What then he's got to, he knows he's got to do that. It's his role as the captain. But guys are honest with themselves too. I don't think there's anybody in there. The team's good about it. Keeps egos in check. Nobody's out there being like, it wasn't my fault. It's like, it's a team effort. The team, it's we, it's not I. And so guys get it. Like I talked to KK just the other day about, it's tough stretch of the season for him. I mean, he's been healthy scratch multiple times. He's kind of season fell off the rails. And I just, sat down and talked to him and just asked him like, what do you think has been going on? How's the team communicated with you? And just, and he was open about it. He was really honest and open and just keeping a positive demeanor about it. And so I think
one of the questions I was referring to was, because he kind of said like, they've been honest with me. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is he can be disappointed. He can be upset about a lot of things, his play and how much ice time and who he's with and all those things. But as long as everybody's on the same page, at least, like it doesn't sound like he's being shut out. I know there's a lot of trade rumors and things swirling already, and he's been playing okay. He just hasn't been putting up points. I mean, defensively and stuff, he's been pretty well, except for a stretch there. But I was really excited to see that he knows what's expected of him. It's being communicated clearly, and that's the kind of thing I'm looking for out of when I read an article, because that's not what I'm. You're not going to ever pick that up as a fan, right?
Yeah. So it's like a thing. It's like, again, it's back to like the job. It's like guys get it, and questions have to be asked. I mean, you can't. Everybody likes when it's all peachy clean and everything's happy go lucky, but sometimes there's just people like you just need to know information, and it's just whether or not the team wants to divulge it. Like Rod wasn't as open when I asked him about like KCAS, like specifically, is there anything with him? And he's just like, team's too healthy. It's like, well, I mean, he's been the healthy scratch. He's been the go-to guy. So there's something there, but it's, you got to ask the questions, even if they don't want to answer, always push the envelope. Maybe you'll ask it like one more time, but that's the other thing to know is when to push the envelope and when to not. You see somebody has like bad games in a row and you see them in their locker and they're just kind of like, or something, like you're not going to get a good response. You're going to get like clickbait or whatnot. And like some people will like that. And you get reporters that do that. Not here in Carolina necessarily, but you get reporters that will like find a guy who's off and get like a money quote and then run it. And it's like, but that damages the relationship with the players. They want to trust you and be able to tell their story and not bag on them. They're okay with you being honest. And, that's all you have to do is you got to be honest with them. They'll be honest with you. And I feel like that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, that ability to read the room essentially is something that comes with experience. The fact that you're able to do it so quickly, because look, 5 years is not a long time. Like it's not a long time. So you had to be able to pick that up quickly and to get the stories that you do. It says a lot about your abilities. To basically, let's focus in on this year, because this one had to have been strange and difficult. The Carolina Hurricanes in November, December are not the Carolina Hurricanes that are April 16th. You know what I mean? 15th, 14th, whatever. How did you notice a change in the air around the team at all? Like you're in there. Was there an aura to it? Like, how did it all play itself out? Because this is a very strange year. Fans were used to having the Canes kind of, they might run into some tough stretches, but we've never experienced, since Rod was around, we have not experienced what we did at the start of the season. I think that's fair. Take us through that.
So I don't know. I don't think it was too different. I mean, I think the Canes really keep it light, and they're very good at being like one day at a time. And kind of, I think if you think about the worst stretch of that kind of April, November, it was all on the road, and they won 2 at the end to kind of come home. So we kind of missed that block of. I assume if they were kind of at home during that 4-game Western Canadian road trip, kind of if they came home after those losses, maybe a different kind of feel, atmosphere. But I think they got those wins, and it's kind of. I think at the beginning it's kind of like a roller coaster. It was like really good highs, and they were like, we didn't like this. And, guys were serious about it. I remember like Jordan Stahl, Jordan Marnick, Rob Benmore. They were all like, guys have to be better. Guys have to buy in. We're not having a buy-in fully. And, but they would say that, after one game, but like at the next practice, they'd be like, it'd be a mellow feel. And I feel like the team's really good at kind of compartmentalizing that. I don't think they let it bleed over at all. I mean, I've never really felt the room be like, after a loss, like, obviously in the room after losses, kind of guys are kind of, not happy, but the next day, it almost never feels like it carries over to that next game, kind of next practice.
That's really how you kind of have to do it, right? A loss is a loss. You got to put that away and try not to carry it with you for the player's success. You know what? I'm going to change this slightly. When we have our Caniacs and Jerks in, we ask them 3 questions, right? And what they are is, who's your favorite player? If you had to trade your favorite player to win the Stanley Cup guaranteed this season, would you? And if the third one is if I could guarantee a Stanley Cup victory this year, but you had to have 5 years of missing the playoffs immediately afterwards, would you be willing to do it? We're not going to put you through there because you know what, you're professional, right? And so you're doing your job right. But what I would like to know is is there who's the easiest guy to interview? Who is it? Is it Rod? Is it Seth? Like, because he's so jovial, like he's like kind of devil may care kind of guy, right? So who is it? Is there one that you'd like to reveal to us?
So Jarvie does not get my vote because he stays out on the ice after practice for an extra 15 to 30 minutes every time. So if like you want to talk to him, you're sitting in that locker room waiting for him to come out. So not
wow.
him. He's a great
used to do that. Yeah.
Great interview, but he is a rink rat, and it's like, come on, Jarvie, let's go. Come on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, Sebastian Aho, I think, is just an incredible interview. I think he's gotten so mature and so much better about it. You can ask him almost anything, and he'll like after games, like it's like you ask him a question that can be answered like yes or no, and he'll be like, kind of like that. But then he just will go on like a 30-minute or not 30-second explanation about it. Like he'll like dive deeper into it. It kind of reveals his inner thought processes and all that. And I think he's gotten really, really good and mature about it. And like, for his growth as like, coming over from Finland, English obviously was, was fine, but it wasn't like great. He couldn't do like long interviews. And now he's like one of the best guys to talk to on the team. I mean, he can give you so much insight into things. It's like he's willing to talk. He's joking around with you. He's jovial. He's just such a good interview. And it's like, it's good because he's like the Hurricanes star player. It's a guy that you want to be able to talk to because people are more interested in reading kind of about Sebastian Aho than, maybe other people just because of his, his accolades and his kind of reputation. Brady Shea is just such a, like, it's, even if you're not interviewing him, if you're just like chatting in the locker room, he's just so conversational. He's so nice. He's so awesome. Like Brady Shea's, he's almost like the perfect man. I mean, the handsome built sculptor, and he's just kind and nice. It's like, he really is as nice
It's
as he
that
looks.
little gray flow thing that he's got going on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He feels like he could throw in a tweed jacket and like be a professor, right?
No question. Yeah.
Like,
that's
you'd show up to, English composition and he's like, oh, it's Brady Shea. Like, I would not be surprised, right?
that's
Auntie,
amazing.
look.
Auntie Ronza too was just like, you put a tape recorder in front of him and you just ask him one question, you walk away. 5 minutes later, he's still talking about that question. So he's great at talking. Like sometimes you're like, all right, Ronza, we're getting a little long here, but he's another guy. He'll just chat with you. He just talks. He's open. He's really good conversationally. So I think if I had to pick like a top three, I would say Aho, Shea, Rance in terms of players to interview.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I don't even know if I want to go here, but I'm going to try. Outside of Turbo, who dislikes media and talking the most on the team? Are you willing to throw that out there? I won't put you on the spot, but I am putting you on the spot.
Let me look here. Obviously, Turbo, not a huge
Turbo,
fan.
yeah. Like I was going to say, that would be the default answer. And I got to say, it's something that I actually kind of love about him. You know what? He's there to do his job, and he doesn't want to, you know what I mean? Like he just wants to play hockey, right? And I mean, sure, the talking with the media is part of the job, but man, if he could get out of there, I could see it. And I understand it too.
Pesh just doesn't love doing media. I joke around with us. He'd be like, why are you talking to me? Come on.
Yeah. That's great.
I would say Pesh isn't a huge fan, but I mean, he does it, but he's not. He's like, come on, talk to someone else.
Yeah.
That's when you go talk to his dad, right? You just go find Brian. Like Brian's one of my favorites on social media.
I was going to say, it reminds me my first time in the locker room here in Calgary. It was during the playoffs, their series against Vancouver, and they were up, and they were out in front 3-1, and I had a chance to go by Theo Fleury. I mean, everyone was surrounding Nieuwendyk, and they were all, like you were saying earlier, everyone swarmed him and they got their mics out and stuff like that, talking to him. And I should have got the note in my head that there's one guy who really doesn't like to talk to media and stuff like that. And he's sitting over here, and I'm thinking, I'm here to do a job, with you're up 3-1, you're trying to talk to him. And it was one of the fuggliest interviews and I mean, I was just a kid, right? Like probably younger than you are, but it didn't go well. You didn't give me much of anything. And it was awful. It was terrible. And I went over and talked to someone else in the locker room, and it was great. It worked out great. But one of those experiences has to be, tough, right? Like, how does that feel when you have kind of a clunker interview? I'm sure they've kind of come along.
Yeah, they happen. I mean, you have a lot of times questions that won't land. I mean, I remember my first, I think probably my first 2 years when I like trying to ask Rod questions, because like my first year I really like tried to stand back, kind of observe and kind of be like, all right, kind of what's the decorum and like kind of what questions do you ask? Because I didn't really have much media training at that time. But it's like I remember having a few. I would ask Rod, and he just kind of gives you a look where he just kind of like that Rod face where he kind of
Yes.
he looks back, squints his eyes a little bit, and looks at
Right.
you, and he just goes and he shakes his head, and he goes, "No, not at all. That's no." And he just kind
Yeah.
of like moves on. It's kind of you
Moves
sit there
on.
and you just kind of like sit there like, oh,
You
it's kind of
shrink,
pin in your
right?
stomach. Yeah, you pin your
Yeah.
stomach. You just kind of lean back. You're like, all right, I'm not going to ask anything for the next 5 games
If
because I'm
I,
embarrassed.
that's right. We'll
So,
meet you
kind of to
again somewhere
piggyback on
later.
that, Ryan. So we had Sam Overton, who was the editor at the Technician last year. I think she was a senior, so I believe she graduated. And Sam, like you, got her start obviously in college at the Technician. Do you feel like you're treated any differently than somebody like, Chip Alexander, who's been covering the team for, since they arrived, basically because of your age or anything? Do you feel that you're being judged at all, like by your age, or do you think that guys talk to you and go, "Oh, he knows hockey and things are good"?
Um, I think it's kind of. I think like I actually feel like Rod actually kind of gives a little more leniency to technician people because he sees like they're young and they're trying and they're like new. It's like he always tries to answer the questions even if like sometimes they're like maybe not as relevant or like kind of don't land as right. But like I feel like he always gives time. I think the players are good about it. From my experience, because it's like the team was pretty young at the time, so it's like I'm about the same age as like a good chunk of kind of like the core players. I'm kind of similar in age, so I don't think it
Hmm.
seems as much of like oh, this youngster, this kind of young kid, where it's like, and then and I'm in the room enough now where it's like they recognize me, they see me, so I don't think there's any kind of I haven't experienced any bias with that in terms of ageism.
That's all. But
Okay.
I know that that's something that used to happen, not necessarily with the Canes, but just in general, right?
Yeah,
It was certainly more of a culture of it, like a lot of things in hockey and sports culture. It was kind of like, okay, that's the new reporter. We're going to kind of haze the kid, like nobody talked to him or whatever for a while. And I feel like hopefully that's changed everywhere. I think Sam, I believe, had a similar experience where she felt that, yeah, she was walked in there like, oh yeah, she's from the Technician, she's a professional. Let's do our thing. And so awesome. It's
Bef-
always kind of good to get that perspective because we like to think that we know the players, right? Because we see them on social media. Some we see their interviews, we get the quotes, and a lot of times I think we put a lot of stock into, oh well, I know who this person is, right? That's a good guy. That's a bad guy. The reality is we only know what they're willing to show, right? So it's good that judging people based upon how they treat others, especially the old adage like judge somebody like how do they treat like wait staff, right? If they don't treat wait staff well,
yeah.
they're probably a horrible human being. Kind of same thing, right? If they're treating the reporter there who's doing the job, maybe asking a tough question, but they're still being professional and treating you good, then that's probably speaks to character. So that's awesome.
I've got just one more question before we move on, and Ryan, you'll maybe be able to you'll know where I'm going with this. Who's the first player that greeted you first, recognized you and greeted you, and then how did it feel? If you've been there enough and everyone knows people know who you are, how did it feel when one of the players greeted you? Hey, how you doing? Was there a first one? And how did it feel at that time?
I can't actually remember like, and it'd be like, oh hey, how's it going? Ryan, how you been? I don't know if I've ever had like kind of that, but I remember what I do remember is the very first player that like just kind of just almost just chatted with me casually. It was
Yeah.
James Reimer. I remember just like he just at his locker stall and I was like, hey, how have you been? He was just talking, and he was like, how have you been? He was like, just asking me questions about like college and all that. And I just remember it was like a really just like, oh, this guy's just actually kind of asked me about myself and not just kind of like, hey, blow me off. It was really like kind of, I really remember that one because he made me feel welcome. Like he made me feel a part of just kind of being a part of like, as a reporter, it made me feel like just, welcomed almost. That's the one that kind of sticks out to me a bunch
And
that I
I
still
would,
remember.
yeah, it's that verification. I'm in it. I'm here. There, when they start looking at you and saying, and asking you about how college is going. I mean, that had to have felt great. That's
Yeah.
one of the things, like when you're in the business and stuff, and you have that type of very easy relationship where you can chat with people and stuff. You mentioned Shay earlier, who's willing to chat with you and just because that's kind of who he is. It had to have felt good. So that's great, Ryan. Man, I love hearing these stories, and you've shared so much. Now we're gonna put you to work. How's this? We'll put you to work, and what can you tell us uh, about the new guys that have joined the team? Scott Morrow. We have Blake and sorry, and I'm missing the other one. Why am I missing?
No.
Nadeau. That's right. That's right. What can you tell us about them? What have you found out? Now that they're here, they've got to be excited.
Oh yeah, I'll start with Scott because got the game in just the other day. He's been kind of really good about it. You could tell it's like you get that a lot of guys, especially from the NCAA, they have a little bit of media training, so like they're kind of prepared for stuff. But it's like Scott, you can still kind of hear that kind of like his tonal raise, like you can see he's a little excited about it. But it's like but again they've been playing for the entire season, so like they're like, oh, I'm just playing hockey, I'm just continuing to play hockey, and I think that's a big thing. Like Scott especially talked about it. It's like that first day. Blake talked about it too. They were like butterflies. They were like, I was so nervous to step out there, but like once you get through that first practice, you're like, okay, I'm a part of this. It's going well. I'm doing it, and it feels almost a little natural now. I remember Scott talking about like the guys have also been really good about bringing all the new guys out for dinners and whatnot. They're inviting them over to their houses. And what he specifically said, he was like, it's not that they're just being nice to me, but they're actually like wanting to get to know me. They're actually like trying their best to like understand me, like learn about me and all that. And it makes him feel like it's made him feel really welcome. He said he went to Burnsy's house. They had taco night, taco Wednesday, because they were on the road Tuesday, he said.
I'm so
It's
jealous.
awesome.
So jealous.
And then like, yeah, same thing with like Nadeau and Blake, like just that you can feel that kind of excitement, that kind of giddiness to get on. And like we haven't talked to Nadeau or Blake as we talked to them the first time, their first practices, and we haven't had the chance to do that to talk to them again yet because they went on the road pretty much right after they got here.
Right.
Scott had the extra week, so you can kind of talk to him a little more, pick his brain a little more. But I mean, all really talented players. I mean, to be a Hobie Baker finalist like Blake was, I mean, he's just got unreal hands. He's got a motor on him. Nadeau's got that heavy, heavy shot. And like we said, we saw Morrow. He can play. Kid can play. Throw him into a situation. I mean, doesn't look half bad.
I was
stuck listening to the Blues broadcast for that one, and they mentioned first game, like his first. I love rookie laps. Like that's one of the best traditions in the NHL. That's one of my favorite things to see. They really didn't talk about him the rest of the broadcast, and I took that as a great sign because, and Ray and I have said before, some guys when you don't hear their name, it means they're doing their job, and for a guy playing in his very first NHL game, I don't remember seeing any major mistakes whatsoever. He was good positionally. He has the speed. He has a heck of a shot, which we all knew, and he slipped right in. If you didn't tell me it was his first game, and he was just some random guy I hadn't seen, I would say, oh, like yeah, like he looks like an NHL defenseman, which is about as good a compliment I think as you can get to a kid who's one game into his NHL career. So fantastic job there, Scotty Morrow.
No kidding. It was so much fun to watch. I mean, you're right. And I kept my eye on him too. Like I'd watch for him out on the ice, and see, okay, he's paired up with Orlov. And how is that going to be? Because Chatfield and Orlov have a pretty good combination. They've worked out a great relationship on how they are on the ice. And you take Chatfield off to give him some rest and you put the kid on. I think they made the right decision as to who to put him with as far as that goes, because Orlov's a vet. He knows how it goes. And now that he's, attuned to the system, I guess, more, everyone knows where they're supposed to be and stuff. You were looking for rookie mistakes and there were none. That's the crazy thing. Like, he just dropped right in and it was great. That had to have felt good for the organization and for Rod as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Rod talks about this too. He's like sometimes it's almost easier when you can just get thrown into kind of the fire because your instincts take over. You're not thinking as much. And you're just going for it. He says he'll be honest. He'll be like, maybe we'll watch like the next few games that he gets, see how kind of to iron things out. But he's always like, that first game, you're not thinking about anything. You're just like going and playing purely on instincts. And you feel like almost sometimes you're like, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Except you once you learn it, you're thinking about it. But when you're in your first time, you don't know what you don't know, and you're just going, you're just playing.
Yeah, no question. No question. Let's move to one of our favorite parts of the program. We love doing this, and you've got some insight that Brad and I don't have, so this is going to be right in your wheelhouse. It's time for the Storm Report, and we're going to take a look at the team, players, aspects of the team, how they've been got and who slots into which position: the tropical depression, the tropical storm, or the hurricane. And we had a chance to tee you up on this one, let you know how this all works. So we're going to dive right in. And you know what? Let's start with you, Ryan. We're going to go from worst to best. So we're coming up. Tropical depression. What aspect or player on the team fits into that slot? And you can base it season long, or you can talk about what it's been like the last week. Like, lay it all out for us. Who do you think fits in that position?
I
don't tough, think. Right? I get to ask the tough questions.
No, instinct and adrenaline.
I'll throw a Kuzi in there right now. I think we're seeing that kind of 50-day layoff and how much it has kind of affected his game. Similar situation where he was kind of pure adrenaline, just rushing off, and it was looking great. But now it's kind of the situation where it's like, he's got to learn the system. He's got to get back into shape. He's got to do all this. He's got to learn a new system. And I think it's a lot kind of impact. I don't think he's been bad by any means, but I think there's so much more levels to his game that we can see. And it's like from where he started to like where he is now, it's definitely like a step down, a step slower because, again, 50 days off from hockey, completely new system, all that. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. And I'm confident that he'll get back there. But as of right now, it's kind of a guy that you saw come in. You saw glimpses of what he could be, but it's like, all right, how we got to build back up. We got to get you back up to the level we've seen you at.
Hey, you know what? That's a great call because, and you're absolutely right. Those first few games, there were some amazing passes that he was throwing out to players who weren't expecting the puck, totally caught them by surprise, and didn't come from, nothing came from it in the passes, but it was like, oh, that's what he can do. Like, he can put the puck on your stick like that. You got to be ready for it. Like, it was amazing to see that. And now, like you said, now we're starting to see some of those puck giveaways, like, giveaways at the blue line, things like that he's been guilty of in the last couple of games that you say, okay, we got to clean that up. Man, that's why you're the expert. Hockey News has so much, honestly. Brad, you're up next.
That was such a good answer.
It was. I know. Like, I'm kind of left at a loss here.
I do have one though.
Okay.
One of the things the Hurricanes are susceptible to because of the style they play, with defensemen pinching, forwards having to stay back, is they're going to give up odd man rushes. It's just going to happen. It's a fact of life. But it's been really bad lately. Like the last week to 10 days, the Boston game comes to mind. The first Boston game of the month comes to mind. There was a couple other games where, teams are, I think it was the Leafs maybe. Like there's 2 or 3
Leafs
or 4.
Was a big one.
Right. And that has to stop, right? You're going to give up those rushes from time to time. It's just a fact of life. Other teams are too good. You're in some ways predictable about what you're going to do because they play such a specific style. But it looks like Rod is loosening the reins a little bit, letting guys be a little more creative, which is helpful. And you're seeing it on the scoreboard, but you still need that defensive responsibility. It's playoff times. One of the things you don't want to do is give up odd man rushes if you can help it, and power plays, right? Those are the two things that are going to be playoff killers. So I'm not overly concerned because A, they have the firepower to fight back, and B, it's something that we've only seen sporadically, but it is something that needs to be cleaned up. So if there's an aspect of the game that needs some attention, that would be my one. But that's being kind of nitpicky, if I'm being fair. I mean,
you know what? It's really hard to pick the depressions when the team is on straight fire. It's equally difficult to pick the Hurricanes when they're struggling like they were earlier in the season, right? So,
true.
You just have to look and think. And here, mine is going to be, it's going to sound repetitive because I've called him out before. I love Bernsey, but he still makes me hold my breath when he's got the puck in his end. He still makes me, because this season, as opposed to last season, he was getting pucks on the net all the time last year. And now it's like the opposition has read his book so easily that they can force turnovers on him. They block his shots. How many times have I said, when Bernsey gets the puck to the net, good things happen. And you see it all the time, right? Whether it's him scoring or a rebound or something, if he can get it to the net, it's great. He's been struggling with that still. And I'm hoping that he's able to amp things up a little bit. Look, he hasn't caused a loss, right? But some of those turnovers are dangerous. The turnovers at the blue line when we're entering, man, they just make my skin crawl every time they happen, right? So it's tough. It's tough. Ryan, we're moving to we're out of the depression. Now we're into the storm. Up or down? If someone who's, ramping up or down, that's where these players fit in. What do you think?
I would go with the Andrei Svechnikov ramping up kind of category. I mean, he was a player that we saw was, struggling for a good chunk of time. He was taking bad penalties game after game, those stick infractions that he's kind of been known for, and he was getting frustrated. He was converting, but now we're seeing him. All right, he got that game off, illness or what have it. And then, he scored a goal, scored a lacrosse goal. I mean, you're seeing a player that, is confident and can be much more of an impact player, much more of a direct north-south player. And like I said, we know him. We know what he's capable of. We see it all. And so it's like, and Rod talked about this. He's like, Svech was fine. He was like, I wasn't worried about it. He's like, but we all know Svechy can be more. He's like, we expect more because expectations are higher. So he's like, he was fine. He wasn't bad, but we know he can be more. And I think we're starting to see him get back up to the more category.
There you go. No question about that. Brad, you're up next.
Yeah, you stole my answer.
I know.
Right. And,
so good,
and for those
right?
who don't know, they're going to have a whole show about the Michigan, right? The lacrosse goal, which is going to include all the NHLers that have done it. And I think Mike Legg. And anyway, that's a separate thing, but that's coming to ESPN. I forgot who was putting it out. But for me, this person might even deserve a hurricane rating, but I think he needs to put up a few more points to get there. But I'm going to give it to Jack Drury, who has been playing really well, not necessarily putting up points, but he's doing things defensively. He is blocking shots. He is getting in fights, which please stop doing that, Jack. You're not very big. But he's doing all those things, right, except for scoring that you want out of those bottom six guys. And he's playing, and it's making the team better. Like when he's on the ice, I feel confident. He's one of those guys who I go, oh, we're good. Drury's on the ice. Nothing bad's going to happen this shift, right? And I think if we can get that kind of Drury Nazen combo clicking again in any level for the playoffs, oh man, that would just be amazing. So Jack Drury, you are like right on the line. Like you're so close. If you could just, put up a couple assists, get a couple of Genos, whatever, and I think you're a Hurricane. But he's playing really well. He's playing some of his best hockey, I think, as we approach the playoffs.
That's an awesome one. I'm going to be a tiny bit controversial, but only because I'm rating this just on the past week, and my expectation is probably a little bit higher than normal. I'm going to say the power play. It's great when it's great, but when it's awful, I want the team to decline the penalty. Like and let's face it, those times have happened where if they're not clicking, they're not whatever. A lot of that has to do with whether they win the draw right off the top. And that's really how the penalty kill is so great for the Hurricanes, because we've got guys like Stahl, and we've got, we'll throw Jarvis in there. He's playing on the penalty kill as well. Aho is in there also. When they win the draw, they kill that first 30 seconds, and then they get to go into that 3-1 system at the line that, the opposition has such difficulty with. It's a perfect system for the penalty kill to work it out, because it forces them to give up the puck, and we already have someone back. I mean, it's just a great, really smart tactic. The power play, though, I mean, when it looks great, there's like bing bang boom goals, and you just sit there with your jaw dropped and saying, why isn't this the highlight reel type goals that you're supposed to see, every night? But man, when they're having trouble connecting, yikes! It looks bad. So they're right in the middle. Like they're just right now. They are not as hot as what they were. They were full blown Hurricane like 2 weeks ago. It was scoring at will, is what it felt like. And now we're down a little bit and stuff, but by no means is that I'm not concerned about it, because we're again moving in the right direction, and we'll talk more about that when we look at the playoff situation in just a few moments. But first, Ryan, you're next. You get the first shot. Who is the Hurricane? Who or what aspect is the Hurricane?
Oh, there's a lot of good options here. I will take the low hanging fruit though and say Jake Gensel.
You know what?
I mean, that I can't think of a time a deadline acquisition was as good immediately as Jake Gensel has been. I mean, I think it's 24 points in 16 games. It's insane. He's elevated Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis's game to another level. He's scoring goals. He's an insane passer, apparently, that we're like, oh, goal scorer, but apparently he's just an insane passer too. He's making the power play better. He's just such a good player. He fits the Hurricanes' mold too, because he wins puck battles. He goes to the corners. He goes along the boards. He's digging for pucks. He's everywhere. He's a menace. I mean, it's just like it all matters when it comes down to the playoffs. But like, I don't know of a better deadline acquisition this quickly into their tenure is like Jake Gensel's been. It's utterly insane how he's fit and how he's gelled. It's like whoa. It's like, okay, the front office made a good decision here. Like,
no question.
Goodness gracious.
There were two aspects at the deadline that everyone, said about Gensel. Number one, well, he's only so great because he plays with Crosby. And the other one was, well, he's not very good defensively. And I'm like, what the heck were these people smoking? They're not watching the same player that we are. He's amazing. 200-foot game is sensational. And putting him against Aho, it's no wonder they are so far into the plus for plus minus. Like, they're through the roof. They don't give up opportunities. It's like they're not only a scoring line, they're also a defensive line as well. Like, it just, nothing is happening against this lineup, and it's great. I love it. I loved it. And the whole Crosby thing, I threw that aside. I had no idea what people were thinking of. I think that was a lot of Pittsburgh Penguin fans who were sad to see him go and wanted to throw muck on it just to say, you may have got the better guy, but you'll find out he's not really as great as we think he is, and I don't want to lose him. And that's that's really
I
how
haven't seen a trade work out better for both teams in a long time because Michael Bunting has been arguably their best player.
Yeah, he's played great. He's played great, putting up lots of points. He had 2 goals last night in a losing effort, but nonetheless, right? He's out there doing his thing.
Yeah, he's in net front scoring goals. I think the biggest thing is he's getting the most out of Malkin. I mean, Evgeny Malkin was like invisible for the Penguins this season, but now with Bunting, all of a sudden he's got this winger who's complementing his game perfectly, and all of a sudden you're seeing Malkin like go crazy. So that's one of those rare win. Like, how often do you see an immediate win-win trade like for two teams? Like it almost never happens.
Very often.
Like it doesn't happen right away. Like sometimes down the line, but never like boom.
Yeah, very unicorn-like to say the very least. Brad, who or what is your Hurricane?
If I can't choose Jake Gensel, who had 2 empty netters, and nobody's ever had an empty net hat trick. Kane's stats let us confirm that, which would have been maybe the coolest thing I've ever seen had it happen. The penalty kill is going to get my Hurricane. The league record for the league record for penalty kill percentage for a season was the New Jersey Devils back, 10 years ago, had an 89.6. So 90 is like the magic number, right? The Hurricanes almost had a 90 last year, the year before. They missed it by
last year
1% or something, right? It was close because they had like one bad game. Since December 1st, the Hurricanes are clicking at 90.6% on the PK, which is just nuts. I mean, and really, so if you add in November, it drops to like 89.4. So October was terrible for it was like 86 or 88, which is for the Hurricanes really bad, right? But 92% since March. I mean, the penalty kill right now is as good as any penalty kill has ever been in the league since they started keeping track. Yeah. And if that keeps up, you're going to win some games.
That's all there is to it. And that's one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest parts of the playoffs too, right? What are the 3 things that you need in the playoffs to be victorious? You need the secondary scoring, you need the special teams, and you need the goaltending. And that leads perfectly into my selection. My Hurricane is Freddie Anderson. And again, this is low-hanging fruit, right, Ryan? Like, you could have picked anyone. This is the other low-hanging fruit out there other than Gensel, because my goodness, I'm still trying to figure out poor Dean in St. Louis. Dean is going to be having nightmares about that stop for his whole life. His whole life. It was unbelievable how he made that save. And then he made a couple of more just like it later on in the game. Again, one of them again against Dean. It was in the Blues broadcasting group. We're saying, man, Dean's not a big fan of Anderson right now, and nor should he have been, because he had guaranteed goals that Anderson just felony stole from him. It was unbelievable. And that is, and what's really great is that people around the league and stuff like that still think goaltending is an issue.
It's the craziest thing.
It blows me away.
Even before Anderson came back, like Kochkov from like December through like February was like top 5 in the league in save percentage and like all this stuff. And people were still putting out these narratives like Hurricanes need to get a goaltender. It's like they don't have anyone they can rely on. I'm like, this guy's literally been top 5 he had a bad start because he was getting like thrown into like games that the team wasn't playing well in, and all of a sudden, and look at lo and behold, now he's winning games. Crazy how that works.
Yeah, isn't that the thing? And look, we cracked. I'll raise my hand. I was one of the guys that cracked on Kochetkov as well, mostly because of those rookie mistakes, and he refuses to hold on to his stick. It's like we got to tie it to his hand or stick him, as Brad was saying. We need to get that involved. But I cracked on him because he would do those rookie things that I guess this is part of the issue. When you have an embarrassment of riches in virtually every aspect of your game, when something goes wrong, you automatically want to crack on it. You know what I mean? Like it's just, these players, this team, this organization is a victim of its own success, really. They've gotten so good now that even the slightest error now they get cracked on for. But Freddie Anderson, my goodness, he's start and finish the reason he's going to be the number one goaltender. He is playing so solidly. He's within himself. He's challenging shooters. He's doing everything right. Mm-hmm. And our opponents had best watch out. He's not allowing easy goals at all.
Always a fun discussion with the Leafs fans about
it is, right?
Scapegoat Freddie Anderson. Even when you give him the numbers, he's one of the best all time in the playoffs.
And just unbelievable, right?
Sorry you couldn't score 3 goals a game. Like, it's not Freddie Anderson's fault. He got an assist. Last night.
I think last year too. Freddie was arguably like all around like the best goaltender in the playoffs. Like Sergei Bobrovsky got hot at the right time, but I think Freddie had like almost better numbers like throughout like the first few rounds.
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was crazy.
He's 5th in the league in save percentage this year, and the 4 guys ahead of him have 1 or 2 games played.
Yeah. So
anybody can come in and play a period or a game and go get a 1.0, right? I mean,
Yannick Peretz.
Not me, but like any professional.
Yannick Peretz, 1,000 save percentage.
There you go. Look, we're running short on time, but we still have to talk about something important, and that is what the heck is going on in the Eastern Conference, right? Like, this has been nuts, from everyone losing to everyone winning.
Except the one team we wanted to win.
Yeah. Thank you, Islanders. I'm so annoyed with them right now. You have no idea. I want them to just miss the playoffs outright.
Right.
Honestly.
I mean, not to deep dive it, because we've been keeping close tabs for a few weeks now. I said like a month ago, the Islanders are going to, which we're out of it. I'm like, they're going to make the playoffs. I believe in them. It's one of those teams I pull for, even though I probably really shouldn't. And then they tanked, and I'm like, okay, well, never mind, they're out. And now they're 3rd in the Metro. And Islanders, I do not understand you. My gosh, pick a lane, please.
Stay in it.
But, we were hoping for their help against the Rangers to maybe capture the Carolina's first ever President's Trophy. That didn't work out. But the Islanders are in 3rd. The Capitals, Wings, Flyers, and Pittsburgh technically all have a chance. I don't think Pittsburgh's chance is realistic, but it's mathematically possible. You have the Wings and Capitals have a game in hand on the Flyers. They all have 87 points. So I think the race is Capitals or Red Wings for wild card 2. I think that's really the matchup. What's really amazing to me, and what people have not been talking about, Ray, the Eastern Conference doesn't have a champion yet. The Dallas Stars have a nice big Y next to their name. They have locked up the West.
Yeah.
The Rangers have 112 points. The Hurricanes 109. The Bruins 109. The Panthers 108. And all 4 of them, trying to figure out if the Panthers can actually do it.
They
can.
They
had if everything went right, you have at least 3 teams that could still lock up the East. Right? And the Panthers, I'd have to actually do the math, and I can't do that live on the air here. But the East is just, I don't know what to think of the East this year, because as good as everybody is, everybody in the East seems to be really good or really terrible. Then you have these teams who don't want to be in the playoffs until this weekend or last week, and then they're like, oh, I guess we do want to be in the playoffs. But out West, the Stars are legit, and a Kane Stars matchup for all the Finns out there would be amazing. I think the Canucks are not as good as the 107 points allows. The Jets, I think, are going to maybe just take it to town on the Avalanche. If they put up football scores against the Avalanche, that might be something else.
Yeah, that was shots fired last night, wasn't it? Like
Yeah.
7-0. They went in
that was a
there.
statement.
Yeah, it was like, you know what? Watch out. And my goodness, how did they? That must have been hard. Like a 7-0 drubbing. All of the goals in the first two periods too. Like,
Yeah.
the
And
game's over after 40.
I would
Wow.
keep my eyes on the Predators out west.
They're
I don't know why. They feel it's just an instinct thing, right? I haven't looked up any stats to say this is going to happen. I don't know why. I feel like the Preds are in a position where if they get good goaltending, I don't know.
And
I
they
feel like
have.
they could make some noise.
The Preds
Yeah.
are such a weird team to me. Like that was a team when I was like watching like the off season or like the trade deadline. It's like, why are they adding pieces? This team needs to rebuild. They don't have like that super high end young talent, and it's just like they're doing enough to be good. And like I say doing enough, and they have like an 18-game point streak. It's like that's more than enough. And it's
Yeah.
like I'm like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, this is like kind of a mid team, but I'm like results wise, I'm like, this is a good team. I don't know. I can't really
they're not.
conceptualize how I feel about them.
They're not as good as an 18-game win streak, if that makes sense. Like a lot of that, any team, if you hit 18 games in a row, that's some luck. But there's just I feel like it's maybe they learned something from that streak, right? A lot of hockey is about, a lot of sports in general, attitude, energy, feeling loose, going to the locker room, right? Smiles on your faces. No, everything's going to be fine, guys, right? And I
Yeah.
think they have that. And
Yeah.
I think that 18-game win streak they're not that good, but can they dig deep? And I think maybe that winning streak taught them you can dig deep because you should have been sellers. Like Ryan's 100% correct. So I don't know.
I think Vancouver Nashville series. Might lean Nashville there, honestly though.
I might too, and that seems really weird because Vancouver's been great all season long. They have astounding goaltender and lots of goal scorers, but they've been very mediocre of late. Now they played great last night against the Oilers, who were minus McDavid, if I recall correctly. They held them out. When I look at this, it's a weird feeling, guys. For the first time ever, as a Caniac, as a Whaler Cane, I'm wanting to get that President's Trophy in the worst way. Now I really, really want it. Like I said, so much so that now I just want the Islanders to flame out, or they'll be our opponents and we can thrash them and win the series 3-0 because they'll give up the fourth game not wanting to be with us. That's what I really want. Like we're approaching the team that shall not be named, hate
Oof.
at this point for what they did. And now we've got to be Senators fans, or at least I'm cheering for the Sens. I want Kachuk to run wild all over them. I want Stutzel to score, 8 on the Rangers. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to just beat the crap out of them. That the feeling with you guys, or am I just, my eccentric old self once again?
I'm all for, if you're not going to help us out, because I've never cared about the President's Trophy, and I still kind of don't, but it is one of the few check marks that the Hurricanes have not attained. And it's difficult to win, especially in a year like this year where there's a lot going on. Like, there's a lot of good teams. I know people are going to point to last year's Bruins team, and we had Bobby, right? Bobby said last year's team was, or last year was just devastating, right? Because they didn't win anything. They did win the President's Trophy. But this is different. Like, they were so good and they just took off and never looked back.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing now is a really tight race between 3 competing teams that all can sniff and all want it. And that's elevating the play of all those teams. And whereas the Hurricanes have traditionally peaked early the last few years, unfortunately, this year they seem to be peaking at the right time. And the NHL playoffs that's a big part of it. That and attrition, right? If you're peaking at the right time and your guys are healthy, huge dub. So I would like to see it. I will say, as far as superstitions go, I'm okay winning the President's Trophy. Do not touch the Prince of Wales. Just leave it on the table if you get that far. That is one I am going to stick to. We know what happened in 2002. Just let that be. But the President's Trophy, statistically, if you win it, you generally go deep in the playoffs. You don't always win, but it's also the hardest trophy to win in sports. So it's the stats will prove to you that the President's Trophy winner generally does pretty well.
Yeah, and people like to be like, oh, you won the President's Trophy, but like if you lose like in the Eastern Final or whatever, they're like, haha, you actually suck. And it's like, there's a lot to be said about how if you can be the best team in an 82 game sample size as opposed to a 7 game sample size. Hockey's so much luck, and it's like, honestly, the President's Trophy is like, it's like I would say the second hardest trophy in sports to win behind the Stanley Cup, because it's like
100%.
you got to be the best team for 82 games in a sport where attrition and luck is such a huge part of it.
Man, oh man, this has been a fantastic episode. Ryan Henkel of the Hockey News. That's got to feel good, eh? Ryan Henkel of the Hockey News. That's so awesome. We're so delighted that you were able to take a little bit of time to join us and make this show better. And on a very quick side note, congratulations. And I'm wishing you all of the best, because next week you join the likes of Brad and I in the world of married. Your marriage is next week. Now, how are you going to do this when you're getting married and the playoffs go? Have you put in a word with the NHL? Just put the thing on one day? How is this going to work for you?
I've tried to send Gary Bevan a letter. I'm like, please give the Canes a Saturday schedule. That's what we're looking at, Gary. I sent him a letter, so we'll see if he gets it. But it's either Saturday and I'm just running back and forth doing all sorts of stuff, or it's Sunday, and you know what? Game 2 is where I'll jump in.
There you go. So again, congratulations, and wishing you and your fiance all the best.
Thank you,
Brad. What a great show.
What a beauty.
Had.
And it's funny that since Andrew was kind of, Ryan's mentor at like the technician and got him going, and we've been trying to get Andrew on for months, and he's agreed to come on, but like things, one week I had something pop up and we couldn't record, and then he had something pop up and we couldn't record. I think we rescheduled 3 times, which is just kind of funny to me. So thank you, Ryan. Maybe I can use you to bag on Andrew a little bit and get him on.
No question.
Maybe so.
But I think 2 out of 3 times were my fault, so I can't be too upset. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a pleasure. Once again, enjoy the stuff that you're writing. The article and stuff about KK I thought was particularly interesting, because he's one of those guys I'm pulling for, right? We've when guys aren't playing well, we don't mind saying this person isn't playing well. And with KK, I think we've given him a little bit of a pass and saying he's playing okay. And in some cases he's playing well. He's just not scoring. And it's I don't know. He's in a tough position. He's a young kid, and I think some of it's the development, right? Had he developed here from start to finish, I think he would be an entirely different player. So
that's a fair statement.
Enjoyed the article, because I'm glad he seems to feel that he's being treated fairly.
And Ryan, before we sign off, we want to let you promote yourself. Pimp your work, because man, everyone should be reading it. We know how good it is. Tell everyone about it.
You can read my stuff on the Hockey News' Carolina Hurricanes team site. It's just the Hockey News, I think, / Carolina Hurricanes. You could just Google. If you Google the Hockey News Carolina Hurricanes, the site should pop up. Daily content, games, recaps, player interviews, all this sort of stuff. I'm most active on Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter. I guess is the proper terminology. At RYANHENKEL _. I also post my articles on Blue Sky and Threads under the same name. I'm not as active though tweeting there. I just post article links. But if you're looking for that, I also will post on the Canes subreddit sometimes too. So you can find me all over the place. But if you're looking for anything major, it's the Twitter /X. It's RYANHENKEL _, and of course the Hockey News Carolina Hurricanes team site.
Ryan, thanks you so much. We're going to hope that you'll be able to join us sometime in the future. We'd like to come back to you every now and again because you're bringing the knowledge and you got the great experiences of being behind the scenes and talking with the players direct. Man, that's there's nothing quite like it. So congrats to you, and please join us again.
Will do.
Definitely.
All right, Brad, we've done it all. We've covered everything that we needed to, and there's really only one thing left, right?
Playoff hockey starts in less than a week.
Oh, man.
Was that it?
Bring it. That's one of the things. But the other...
We had 2 things left. Okay.
Yeah, we have 2 things left. Is Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.